Hey everybody, it's your buddy Beard Grizzly, and love is in the air. It smells like rose petals and fluffy unicorns, and it's making me sick, but that's beside the point. Crimson Days is upon us, and though I could cover this single grimoire card that exists about the topic, I thought it better to look into something I seldom hear about the relationships of destiny. There's actually a fair few of them, and they can sometimes be at the heart of the matter when dealing with other stories and tales from the bullet-ridden history we have of destiny. It seems even if the ultimate goal of humanity is to just survive, the old adage of love will find a way still holds true. Added, it still brings up a question idea for Guardians. Can they have kids? Yes, well, I'm moving a little fast for this relationship, so let's go back to dinner in a movie. The idea of Crimson Days is a bit mixed, but the overall idea, as listed in the one lone card, goes over two Guardians that were competitive with each other. They constantly made bets and consistently thought they could one-up the other, until one fateful encounter led them to the same place on Mars. They fought each other, called each other names, and all the while, the enemy surrounded them before they knew what was happening. They turned their attention towards their encroaching foe, standing back to back, and after the dust settled, it was only them, the two rivals, left to tell the story. They did, informing the tower of the powers that bolstered themselves on Mars. Or so goes the tale, since by the end of it all, it seems no one can really settle on a version to tell. Like with some stories, it's just what this one is, a story. Crimson Days isn't just about the bond so much as it is showing we're more powerful together, be it in love, friendship, or otherwise. It just so happens to be around Valentine's Day, which means absolutely nothing, right? Yeah, sure. Well, figured we go over the basics with everyone about Crimson Days in case you've never heard the story before. It's a little reminder about lore interpretation, if nothing else. But going away from topics I still need to talk about, let's get into the relationships of destiny. The question, of course, is just who might be with who, but some relationships are written out for us. I should call out, for the sake of those that might get triggered by the topic of fictional characters and their relationships together, that destiny is a bit gay. Someone's gonna make a big deal of it in the comments section somewhere. You already know it. We'll start with one of the oldest relationships on record, which is Chioma Essie and Maya Sundaresh. This couple was first heard of in the Vex Grimoire cards back from D1, but we didn't really know about their involvement with each other until Grimoire Vex 4. There were some hints before, yes, but this was the big hit, where Chioma and Maya really show the signs of being together. In Vex 5, we really get to the nitty-gritty. Maya is detached from Chioma, as she's been working on the device that Future War Cult now seems to use. Somewhere along the line, after their time together in Ishtar Academy, Maya was called away to do this work that Chioma would now call detestable, deplorable, and something the two vowed never to play with again. This work involved splitting consciousness from one another, ensuring that the group of early cultists wouldn't, commit suicide. We don't truly know what happened with Chioma and Maya, but with their tale coming from the days of the Golden Age, it's assumed they're not with us anymore. Still, Bungie did let us into a few small stories about these two within Destiny 2, one of which from the exotic ship Sundaresh Experiment 13R. Here we find that Maya is still conducting some experiments on Vex biology, using Radiolaria as a coolant for her new ship. We also see a bet that is summed up by a deadlift by the physically superior Chioma in the Tractor Cannon tab. Additionally, we know that Maya and Chioma knew each other for quite some time, decades in fact, before joining up with the Ishtar Collective. But again, in the course of it all, we aren't sure what happened to the two of them. Though, who knows? 227 copies of each were released into the Vexgate network, able to explore and branch out as they may want to. One can only guess how many Chiomas and how many Mayas are still together, or how many are heartbroken at the loss of the other, if they split up or if they were killed. Though, I suppose that's 228 possibilities that exist, including the originals, to know what might happen to them over time. But I suppose that's the telling of Chioma and Maya, the course of time. Well, before I get choked up thinking about this strange tale anymore, let's move on to another, maybe one that's not quite as cut and dry. This one we'll read over, since I think it's a bit self-explanatory. I need a new project. Disagree. Marcus's ghost floated over to where he sat with his head down on his workbench and gently bumped his temple. I see 3 half-finished sparrows in this room alone, and you still haven't done that thing Ikora asked you to do. You're plenty busy. Marcus tilted his head to glare at his ghost. Didi, be serious. I am. Marcus groaned. Fine. Didi floated over to the wall where Marcus's bright red sparrow racing jacket dangled from a hook. You know, I've always wanted one of these. For me. Really? Is that weird? No! Marcus jumped to his feet. It's aces. Of course you need a racing shell. I'm gonna make you the flastiest shell you've ever seen. He grabbed his ghost out of the air and kissed her shell. Thank you, Didi. You're the one... Never mind. Didi bumped her guardian's forehead affectionately. You're welcome, Marcus. I'm sure some of you can read this one a bit too far, but to see the affection and care between a ghost and her guardian is just another line to see how we each are able to work with each other in the spirit of Crimson Days. Or just, you know, an average everyday idea of showing affection to a good friend. Go figure that. In the category of other questionable relationships, within the recent class quests from the Titan, it's been brought up that maybe Shax and Efforty had a thing. Of course, that's conjecture from a couple of lines where I'd find it more likely they were good friends. Still, between both of them liking their helmets and spending a possibly long time together, the possibility would be an interesting one. There's also the small bits we know about Devrim K and Mark, though, aside from some voice lines, not much is known about them. We know that Mark was a great cook and always welcomed Devrim home after he was done in a battle. We don't know if Mark is dead or if the two are just separated due to the war or otherwise. It's a bit vague for now. And speaking of vague ideas, Ikora has seemingly accounted for a few possible relationships, one being seen in the Vesper of Radius lore tab, a new set of warlock robes that look quite snazzy if I say so myself. This is another I'd like to read and allow you to think on the relationship herein, since it ties back to another tale I like to reference often. Ikora Ray's personal library has no door. That's not a problem for the hidden. One moment, Ikora is alone at her desk, head bowed over a dusty tome. The next, Chalco Young stands behind her. I wondered what you were up to, says Chalco. Really, Ikora doesn't turn. I always know what you're up to. I surprised you. Admit it. I promised I'd never lie to you, Chalco. The hunter heaves a heavy sigh and drapes an arm over Ikora's shoulder to read over her tome. This is why you're taking this field work? Because you're reading On Circles, Volume 12? I wrote it. Unsurprising. I have to rewrite it. All 12 volumes. Dare I ask why? The Traveler is alive. I've heard, Chalco shrugs. So? So our physics framework was completely wrong. Even about, circles? Ikora turns to look Chalco in the eye. Especially about circles. Chalco and Ikora seem to get along pretty well. Chalco, another all-but-confirmed hidden in service to Ikora, seems pretty chummy with the Warlock Vanguard. I'd say the phrases and lines that really tip me off are the promise of never lying to Chalco, and how close Chalco is able to get to Ikora, draping an arm over her. Still, again, they could just be very good friends or something similar, and a lover's relationship is far from confirmed with statements like these. I still find it funny, however, that Ikora allows anyone quite that close to her. She has issues with Cade doing something similar, and they're on the same fire team and have been for some time. Just strikes me a bit as off-putting for the Warlock Vanguard to allow, even if in private quarters. We do see in the recent comic that Ikora and Osiris are also pretty close, however, so this plays to the idea of Ikora's emotions being a very real and vital piece of her character, leaning into Osiris as one of the last good times they both share. As per other good times that Ikora had shared with another member of the city, this refers back to Owl Sector, and someone that may have a very large interest in Ikora by the name of Shun. After carelessly taking off his glove within a quarantined area during the transmission crisis, the bugs that infected Guardians and others before the second Siva crisis that took form with Rise of Iron, Owl Sector's task was to track down a cure for these mites. Shun, however, was out of the vast majority of the proceedings, laid up in bed. By the end of the events of Owl Sector and Shun's recovery from the mites, we get this little log that hints at a possible second life for Ikora. Owl Sector Debrief to Ikora Ray, OSI-6-13. Sometimes I wonder if anything good came from Clovis Bray. Their halls are bright, and yet their records can be so dark. Clovis Bray brought us off-world for good back in the Golden Age. They paved the way for cities and colonies. They raised Earth children on alien planets. You might have been one of them. Sometimes I regret disclosing my history to you. Anyway, if you ever decide that perusing the mysteries of the universe and pushing the limits of power isn't your thing, you know where to find me. I wish you luck, Liaison Shun. In the farm, however, we learn a small truth about the fate of, at least, one of the Owl Sector members, named Quist.
Half the Owl Sector made it out.
I know you want to go
in action yet, but I heard Shun adopted Quist's kids.
Shun takes up the duty of taking care of Quist's children. Best as I can figure, this means Shun's duty to them, his past friend, and the little ones he now looks after, might be keeping him away from Ikora from this point on, since Quist and Shun were both Owl Sector members. Plus, it sounds more like a choice of Ikora's to step down from the Vanguard and come live in the city, perhaps in an archive or otherwise. Or, just settle down and have a life for a change. Shun is a character we may or may not hear of again. Regardless, this shows that Ikora is far from two-dimensional. She has a lot of emotion, contrary to what might be observed from her at a single glance. She also has a fair few friends that she is comfortable with, ones she has revealed her past to. A past that I would love to hear about, out there in the wilderness, finding different trinkets and truths. But for Shun, it ends somewhat tragically, at least for now, caring for the children that Quist left behind after the war with the Cabal. So far, anyway. We'll have to see if they resurface, but with a voice line, even if it is just on the farm, that tells me that we may see Shun again. Alright, there's one more major relationship, one that easily tops the rest. Best for last, I suppose, but this one isn't much better in terms of outcome. One night in a bar, as some stories begin, a hunter by the name of Pahanin brought together two unlikely friends. Wei Ning, a titan that truly felt fists were the only thing worth using and the only philosophy to stand by, and Ariana III, a Praxic warlock under the Cormorant seal. Well, she says that enough on her own, I suppose. A moment and a night is all it took. After Pahanin had introduced the two, Wei Ning and Ariana III were seemingly inseparable. Wei Ning even built the Fighting Lion with the basic idea of understanding more of what may have built Ariana, or more how she might have been put together. For Wei to admit this is a big deal, when her fists are the only important thing she uses otherwise, punching mountains in her spare time. Still, long after Wei Ning had set ablaze the fire victorious in the city for all to look at and remember what they fight for, the selfsame flame that the Firebreak Order stood to defend, the battle on Luna, the great catastrophe, had to happen. In a vision on the moon's surface given to her by interrogating a wizard, Ariana III foresaw the death of Wei Ning, killed by Crota, along with thousands of other guardians. From here, most of us know the story of Crota's end. Ariana swore vengeance on Crota for the death of Wei Ning. The first fire team was composed of those that were after an outcome of all different levels, but for Ariana, it was simply to do right by Wei Ning. Hopefully Ari and Wei are together in another place at this point. Hopefully. Being killed by hive swords does complicate the issue of the afterlife a bit after all. I really wish I could end on a high note from Destiny stories, but I was quickly reminded how many stories from our tales that we have are filled with tragic ends. I could cover the love that is shared within the Oryx family, the way that the Fallen do seem to have a family structure, but as far as bigger Guardians and Golden Age stories go, that's the best I can do to sum them up. Then again, I could have talked about Cade's complicated history, but for now, there's not much to really go by, and a lot of it is conjecture. Besides that, I feel it better to look at that more on its own and at another time. That said, I guess I'll end on a message, even if a bit cliché. Today, tomorrow, the day after, make sure you let someone you love know that you care for them, since it might just be what they need to get through the day. 1 day, 1 week, should not be the excuse you need to do so. It doesn't have to be family or that special someone either. Friends can mean just as much. I say it often, but you guys help me day in and day out to keep my chin up and keep going. I am thankful for each and every one of you, even if you don't mean to be here past just listening to my ideas from time to time. I hope you all enjoy time with your families as I've been able to do so over the past couple of weeks, but I do hope to get back to my second family more often, which is right here. Anyway, enough with my sappy commentary. My emotions are a bit all over the place currently. Don't mind me. It happens with some memories I have around this time of year. If you liked what you heard, you know the buttons to press to hear more from me and let me know what you thought of this video. Otherwise, I'll see you next Spacetime, Guardians. Take care.